Hi everybody, JJ here with ASUS. Sorry about the delay, guys, but excited to be joining you guys and being able to talk about some of the cool stuff that we've been doing in terms of the latest generation of Intel series products, including the 10th gen series launch. That was a pretty big launch that Intel had in terms of the latest generation of Intel series processors, and of course to go alongside with that, there's always a chipset launch, and with us being the largest motherboard manufacturer out there, we've always got a lot of things that we're working on when it comes to that. So we've got a pretty extensive, comprehensive motherboard lineup, and it's definitely I think always of interest for a lot of you out there that are in the PC DIY building space. And so I think most of the focus that we wanted to try to have here in terms of the panel was just kind of giving you guys some insight in terms of what are some of the cool things that we've done in terms of Z490, which is kind of the performance-oriented chipset that aligns with the 10th gen series of processors. At the same time, keep in mind that there are also other respective series chipsets that you can also complement these latest generation series processors with. One of the cool things that Intel does in terms of the segmentation series of processors is that you've got the flexibility to kind of go either with a non-overclocking part or an overclocking enabled part. Choice is really up to you. And so depending on that, you've got B and H series chipsets. So if you're looking just to be able to have a stable and reliable system, and maybe you're not necessarily focused on like AAA gaming, and you need to be able to focus on having the absolute highest performance, aggressively pursuing CPU overclocking and DRAM overclocking, a B series chipset and H series chipset will definitely be able to give you a great experience. You can get them in multiple form factors, ATX and even in mini ITX if you want to go for a small form factor. So those are going to be some options that you have available to you. So just keep in mind that while most of the focus that we're going to be talking about here, at least on the board side, is going to be for boards like Z490. A great example of that would be something like here. This is going to be our ROG Strix Z490-E gaming. So this is going to be kind of right in that high-end sweet spot that we've got, that it's really popular with a lot of enthusiasts that are going to be looking to build a system. While we're going to be focusing on boards like this, right, there's always going to be a lot of different options that you have available. And so definitely if you're interested in more, you're trying to figure out what's the right option, first and foremost, make sure to go ahead and check out our EdgeUp website. That's edgeup.asus.com. We've got full build guides where we cover all the different respective series that we offer, and we go into providing insight into what boards with what respective features. And we also recently launched a PC DIY Facebook group where I'm actually the admin of the group, so you can feel free to go ahead and join us in there, ask questions about your build. If you've got your build already completed and you're looking for insight on tweaking and tuning it, or you just want to be able to share your build and be able to kind of show it off to the community, and also maybe be able to get it promoted on our ASUS social media channels, you can feel free to go ahead and join that group and help to promote the PC DIY initiative. So I think the first thing that we want to kind of just talk about a little bit is going to be giving some context into the motherboard lineup it is. So if you're kind of new to PC building, or you've kind of been building for a long time, the first and most important aspect to kind of keep in mind is going to be what type of choices do you have available to you in terms of your form factor. Your form factor is going to ultimately define the look and feel of your system in terms of the overall size, right? And so that's going to be a key part of the overall building experience. So you've got your traditional ATX, which this is what you would have when you talk about ATX, and the vast majority of people that are going to be building a system are going to pick an ATX-based motherboard. The biggest benefit that you have with ATX is outside of the visual aesthetic, that they're the easiest to kind of see the overall look and feel of how the system defines itself in terms of the aesthetic of the board, the components, the lighting that you have in the system, and the chassis that you might have, is also going to be that they're generally easier to build in just because you've got more physical space within the chassis. So you've got ATX, then you've got a little bit smaller option with micro ATX, and then you have the smallest series of motherboards, which is going to be mini ITX. Now for Z490, we do offer motherboards within all three of those form factors. So if you want to go ATX, we've got you covered. If you want to go micro ATX, we've also got you covered. And you want mini ITX, we also have you covered. So for all three of those different form factors, we do have a motherboard available for you. Now, the next question outside of kind of form factor is going to be understanding, I think, our product lineup. For a lot of people, sometimes there can be a little bit of confusion kind of trying to figure out, what makes sense in terms of which is the right motherboard for me. And that can be a little bit kind of challenging sometimes to figure out. We do have a large number of series of motherboards. And for this generation specifically, we've got the Prime series of motherboards. We then have the Tough Gaming series of motherboards, which is new. This is not the same as our previous generation Tough line. It's now called Tough Gaming, and it's actually our entry series. So if the Strix series that I just showed off here is our middle series of gaming products for gaming enthusiasts, we have then on the higher end side, so at the top, let's see, our best motherboards are going to be ROG, then the kind of the better options are going to be RG Strix, and then our good options, our entry option is going to be Tough Gaming. So we've got Tough Gaming, RG Strix, and then formal ROG. And then rounding it out, we also do have ProArt and WS. So in total, there's actually 5 different series of motherboards that ASUS has. And so definitely that can be a little bit challenging for those of you who sometimes are trying to figure out what's the right motherboard to pick, right? And I think the easiest way to kind of go about it is that any single one of these boards can be a gaming motherboard, right? But what kind of defines, quote unquote, a gaming board versus, let's say, a non-gaming board? And the main differential is going to be that I think, if you factor in some of the considerations as a gamer, aesthetics is definitely going to be one, so the look and feel of the motherboard. But then from a design perspective, there are definitely attributes that we spend time and effort on. That's what we'll talk about. And these are going to be things like audio and networking, as well as, I think, enthusiast level controls. Now, definitely not all games require extreme levels of CPU performance, DRAM performance, and kind of tweaking and tuning your system. But for some of those that are looking for the best performance possible, they're going to be looking for performance tuning attributes. And that's definitely where we're going to make more investment on the gaming-centric and enthusiast-centric motherboards. But it is important to know that from an overall kind of quality, reliability, and usability level, that the experience between, let's say, our entry Tough Gaming to the ROG Strix to the ROG, it's going to be consistent across all of them. So it's not that you're going to get a board that's not going to be stable or reliable. It really just comes down to, do you value having some of those additional areas of improvement on the motherboard, right? So I'm just going to also occasionally be checking out, making sure that I see anything maybe pop up there in the stream chat. If anybody's got any questions, feel free and ask. For those of you who don't know, just for reference, my name is JJ. I've been with ASUS for literally over a decade. I've actually been very close in terms of our product design and development on many of our key product categories. I've had the opportunity to work directly with our R&D and engineering team, our headquarters product management team, and then of course locally with ASUS North America in terms of our product marketing and product management team. So when it comes to really our components, I've seen us grow from, literally having one line of products under ROG and literally almost being there from the very beginning for the first ROG product to where we are now. And it's pretty crazy that, next year we're going to be celebrating 15-year anniversary for ROG. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at this board and kind of see how that also complements something, like this 10th Gen series processor, right? Some people, when a new CPU comes about, there's always a little bit of discussion as what are some of the benefits. And I think it's important to understand that when you talk about kind of CPU and PC DIY building, it's not just a perspective of the pure performance. A lot of the work that actually we've done on the motherboard side and directly with Intel has been done over years in terms of collaborative R&D effort to really be able to maximize tuning aspects of how you can work within the processor. And this is really, really cool for those of you that are builders. The reason why is because take, for instance, things like adaptive voltage memory control. Intel is still the only vendor that gives you actually the ability to have what's called adaptive voltage control per each core. And this is the most efficient way to actually pursue overclocking. Without kind of getting super complicated, when you take, let's say, a traditional overclock perspective, many users will approach overclocking from a fixed perspective. So let's say if my CPU frequency works at let's say 4.6 gigahertz, right? And I decide to overclock all my cores to 4.6 gigahertz, that might not be ideal. And the reason being is that if you look at the way that cores work, there's always going to be some cores that can actually exceed the level that you've defined. So an example of that might be like, when you take a look at your left hand and your right hand, one is going to be stronger than the other. So you might be able to lift more weight on your right arm than you are on your left arm, right? And actually the same thing can happen in cores. And so Intel was to help to first really put in a lot of effort into doing true per core overclocking, meaning that you could take one core and let's say I want that core to go to 48, and then I want 2 cores to go to 47, and then I want the rest of the cores to go to 46. That allows you to actually maximize the overclocking capability of the chip because you're actually targeting the scaling that's possible respectively on each one of the cores. And we've got a lot of specialized features and functions that we've built in to make this process much more streamlined so that if you don't understand a lot of these aspects, in our newest generation of boards like these Z490 boards, we have our AI overclocking technology that pretty much it will automatically register the type of cooling solution that you have after you've run your games, your stress tests. We know how much cooling performance you have. We've looked at the CPU that you have installed. We know what the motherboard is running, and we can give you a full predictive breakdown essentially of what the target possibility is for your CPU, because we've essentially tested literally hundreds and thousands of hundreds of CPUs and thousands of different types of permutations and configurations, so that we can apply this logic to essentially approaching, an automated overclock experience, which is pretty cool. And this is the type of work that it's not just our internal effort, right? But it's literally years of work that we've worked with Intel to help to maximize, knobs and switches that are within the architecture that gets built in to really maximize this. And these are sometimes things that aren't always discussed amongst media. There's always kind of generalized performance attributes, but these things are important because they are tools that have been enabled to the enthusiast community to be able to fine tune and extend performance even further. And this goes alongside with things like DRAM optimization, cache ratio adjustments, and new for the 10th gen series is something called the voltage frequency curve adjustment. All these things have been baked in, so whether you want to go super simple or you want to, keep it really easy, you can good to go. But let's take a closer look at one of the boards and see some of the cool stuff from kind of a hardware level that you have available to you on the Z490 series boards here. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to little camera setup that I've got right here, guys. Oh, okay. All right, and so here you can take a closer look at the board, and this is really kind of representative of the overall kind of ID design that we've got for the Strix series of motherboards. So they're going to have a monochrome aesthetic. That's going to not contend or compete with the look and feel that you want with your board. So of course that's going to be really easy for you to be able to kind of define the look and feel. And the really cool thing is, for this generation, we also released a Dash A model. And so the Dash A model actually is silver and white. And so if you also are looking for a white themed build, we have you entirely covered. So that's going to be a really cool level of functionality that you have available to you, is that you can go ahead and have either kind of this black aesthetic, or you can also have this white aesthetic. The choice is entirely up to you in terms of kind of the look and feel that you want for your system. So I'm a big fan of the flexibility that we give you now in this generation with our Z490 lineup, in that you can either go with a white themed build, and we've got complementary white products. So that's going to include things like white CPU coolers. We have our Strix LC series. We've got white power supplies. We even have new white chassis that we've introduced, and then we even have white graphics cards. Or you can go with the traditional kind of monochromatic black feel. So either choice is up to you. Now, looking at the board, if we take a look at a couple of things, big thing for this generation is that with of course having the high core counts that you have, you want to make sure that you've got stable and reliable VRM that's well cooled. And so here you can see you've got very large heat sinks. They have a lot of surface area. They're finned. You're going to find this on an entire range of boards. All of them are going to be utilizing power stage based designs. With the power stages, that just means that the power components that are underneath here that give power to the CPU, they're going to operate at a lower temperature with better efficiency, and they're going to have higher performance ratings. This one right here has what's called an integrated heat pipe. So there's a pipe that actually will connect this portion to this portion to this portion to help to provide better temperature performance. You have the option to even put a direct assist fan if you're looking for that. We have these specialized what are called ProCool power connectors, where we've actually even thickened the gauge of the wire on the internal pins for the power connector. Some people wonder, like, why would you do that? Why would you thicken the gauge here? And the reason why is that the thicker you make it, you essentially reduce something called resistance, and the temperature is lower, and it actually higher current handling, which is important. Like when you're using something like this, an i7 or an i9, you could be pulling a lot of current, especially if you're heavily overclocking it. So you want to be able to maximize not only thermal performance, but also the overall power target performance. When you take a look here to the next section, you've got your traditional stuff, like this is going to be your DRAM. So one of the cool things that ASUS pioneered a while ago, still some people don't necessarily understand. If you notice, I just removed all those memory modules, right, with only one essentially latch. And this is a design that we call QDIM. So there's one latch at the top, and then there's no latch at the bottom. So it makes it much easier that when you're locking the memory in, whether you're installing it or removing it, you just have to just hear it click into place, and then you just lock it in with one. This is also really nice that if you need to add or remove memory and you have the graphics card installed, you don't have to run into kind of the situation where when you attempt to unlatch this down here, you would be blocked because the graphics card would be installed. So that's kind of just a nice little subtle thing. Here we've got little diagnostic LEDs that we build on the motherboard. These are called QLEDs. So there's one for the CPU, there's one for the graphics card, for your DRAM, your memory, and then another one for your boot device, so for something like your SSD. So these will actually light up in sequence, helping you know whether or not there might be an issue with the motherboard. That's a really nice kind of benefit that we have there. On higher end boards though, you'll see something like this down here, which is a debug LED, which will help you to essentially have a code that you can reference in the manual that'll let you know if there's something that's going on with the motherboard. But the QLED diagnostic, that's found on pretty much almost the vast majority of our boards, where something like this debug code is only going to be found on select boards. Now, of course, when we take a look here at the top, you're going to start to see some of the areas like RGB, which of course a lot of us are into the RGB. So right there, those are going to be your RGB headers. There's two of them. Now this motherboard, like many of our higher end ROG boards, are going to have 4 headers that are going to be available to you. So that means you can go ahead and connect things like your RGB fans. So an example might be something like this. You take your RGB fan and it'll have a header, and you can pretty much just plug into that header, and from there you're good to go. So you can go ahead and even have splitters on here. So if you want to have multiple fans or LED strips or different items like that on one header, you can do that. And of course that can all be fully controlled within our ASUS Armory Crate software to allow you to go ahead and synchronize and control all your RGB lighting. The higher end boards will even have more RGB lighting zones. Like this board has an RGB lighting zone right here, and then it has an RGB lighting zone down here as well. And then of course there's 2 more RGB headers down here, so a total of 4. Now, if you've ever been kind of wondering when you're building, you might see that there are sometimes some differences between different types of RGB based devices. The 4-pin is the legacy based design, non-digital. So that essentially just means that all the LEDs will be locked to one single value. If you've got a 3-pin, these right here, these are digital RGB, and that'll essentially will mean that the LEDs individually within that, let's say that LED strip or that fan or whatever the product might be, can be independently controlled. So if let's say you had 5 LEDs, you could set them to different colors. A good example of that is actually like in memory. A cool thing that you can do with the memory is that this has a lot of LEDs that are built into it. And so in some builds, I might have actually, let's say I want to have like a cool gradient like purple and pink. I'll put like part of this to be purple, and then I'll put the other part to be pink, right? That's pretty common to most RGB DRAM, but that's essentially the main difference that you have between the legacy non-digital and then the newer digital. And exclusive to ASUS is our addressable or our digital based connectors right here are pretty cool, and that they actually have some pretty nice functionality. The functionality that we have with ours is these are what are referred to as second generation headers. So these second generation headers have the ability to essentially have better synchronization and have also the ability to have essentially automatic sequencing for those LEDs to make sure that they're essentially looping or synchronizing far more consistency and with better latency. So that is something that's cool. Now that is going to be dependent on the device, so you have to make sure that those devices support that. Now beyond that, you've got your fan headers that are on the motherboard. This motherboard has multiple fan headers for, of course, all your chassis fans, any fans you might have connected, things like your AIOs with AIO pumps or water pumps, things along those lines. Now, one thing that we've done for this generation that's pretty cool though is that these fan headers all work on a new function that we have, which is called AI cooling. And so the AI cooling technology on a hardware level will essentially allow us to monitor the temperature in real time on a hardware level. You don't have to have any software installed. This will work 100% on a hardware level. And once it's been set up, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to be monitoring the temperature and the load. So when we notice that the actually temperature is at a consistent level, we'll help to bring down the RPM value of the fans. So that you can have a quieter experience. And what we found actually in a lot of situations that there's many gamers that when they get everything situated, they want, of course, a cool and stable system, but they don't necessarily are as familiar with how to kind of tweak and manage all their fans, even though we have really, really great fan control options that are really easy, where we can calibrate and tune all your fans and kind of go through simple profiles like silent or turbo. Or customize your fan curve altogether. This new AI cooling technology, even if you don't install any software, as long as it's turned on, it'll intelligently essentially adapt. So as soon as there's a load that's detected, it'll help to go ahead and bring the fans back up so that you have better cooling performance. And we also make sure that even though we are going to be reducing the fan performance, we won't generally exceed about a 5-degree difference in terms of the temperature. So you're going to get that quieter experience that's much more noticeable, but it's not going to necessarily be at the expense of cooling performance. But it's a great option that you have to intelligently make sure that you're getting a really good balance between cooling and also between how quiet your system might be. So those are going to be for any one of the corresponding fan headers. New for, of course, many generations is, hey, Stealth, yes. So in regards to your question, I do actually work for ASUS. My name is JJ. I'm the ASUS Technical Product Marketing Manager with ASUS for North America. I've been with the company for more than 10 years. And so you can definitely find me in terms of social media, ASUS Tech Marketing JJ. If you've ever watched any of our live streams or different content that I've done, YouTube channel, or, Newegg or anything like that, you'll probably have seen my face pop around. CS videos, all kinds of stuff like that. So another area right here is that on our ROG motherboards, compared to, say, our Tough Gaming or our Prime series, we have something that's called OptiMem. So for many of you might not be familiar with essentially what is called a trace, but there's essentially these little electrical lines that go between the memory right here and the CPU. And there's a lot of work that we can do to kind of optimize how those signals are essentially laid out to be able to ensure that you have the best compatibility and stability and essentially performance tuning when your memory. And so on ROG boards, you're going to find that they have either OptiMem 2 or they're going to have OptiMem 3 on our higher end boards. And that essentially just means that you're going to have the best experience possible when you install your DRAM. So that's something that you can't see because it's kind of layered into the way that the board is designed, but it's pretty cool. Got USB-C header right here. This is for the latest generation of those that you got Type-C connectors on chassis. And then, of course, you got your traditional USB 3 header that's on there, traditional SATA ports. Here you've got the course dual M.2. So if you want to put in, two M.2 SSDs, you can entirely do that. Choice is up to you. There's dual heat sinks to, of course, keep those cool. Now down here, this is a pretty cool section. Let's see if maybe I can go ahead and get a little bit tighter for you guys. So this section right here is our audio design. So ASUS was actually the first manufacturer to ever do a full isolated audio section on our motherboards, and we called it Supreme FX. And so what we actually did is that there's copper layers that are above and below the signal path that goes from your line level output here to the actual codec. And then there's actually an additional kind of isolation moat right here. But this whole section is essentially it's isolated from the rest of the board to help to maximize this audio chip that we have here, which is called your audio codec. We use an exclusive version of the S21220 audio codec, so ours is higher performing than either other options that are on the market. In addition to that, you get these audio grade capacitors, which give a little bit better tonality, a little bit better richness and detailing. There's two what are called op amps right here. The op amps help to give you essentially just a louder experience when it comes to the overall volume for your headphones. So if you like to have a little bit more punchy audio experience, having these dual op amps is cool. Sometimes other vendors, they only have the op amp integrated within the codec itself, but we use these two discrete op amps, which also gives you a benefit. And then there's a whole audio suite that we have called our Sonic Studio Audio Suite, which gives you a huge amount of customization options where you can go ahead and fine tune everything for, videos, for music, for games. And you can even set up independent, which is really cool. So you can actually go in and define profiles for, let's say, if you were playing, Battlefield or Children of Morta or Hollow Knight, you can actually have different audio presets for that compared to Spotify versus your web browser, so that you don't essentially have, let's say, virtual surround in something like when you're listening to music, but you can have that when you're playing a game. So there's a lot of options that we have that are built in terms of our Supreme FX audio design. Now, in addition to that, when we take a look here at the back, something that's pretty cool. Oh, that's actually a good question. In terms of the SATA ports, I think the reason why you've seen that there's been a reduction in terms of SATA ports has been because generally, with the way the chipset is designed, you have to balance the actual assignment of lanes, PCI lanes, between SATA and between M.2. And so since M.2 has become more popular, there's been a little bit of a trade-off to, say, essentially have some SATA ports, but then also have M.2. So a cool thing here on the back is another ASUS innovation right here, which makes the PC DIY building experience easier, and that's going to be this integrated I/O shield. So you don't have to forget the I/O shield anymore. It's built onto the motherboard, so that's a really, really nice feature. And something that people don't actually realize too is that this integrated I/O shield helps to protect your board and your components from EMI, so electromagnetic interference, and ESD, electrostatic discharge. That's built right on. So you don't have to worry about forgetting it, and it might be inside the motherboard box. It's just built straight on. And so that's a nice benefit that you have with our ROG Strix and our ROG series of boards. On the back right here, you've got kind of all that cutting edge connectivity, you know, with USB 3.1, USB 3.2, you've got USB Type-C. We have our Intel LAN, and on many of our boards for this generation, we're also introducing higher performing specifications like 2.5G LAN. So instead of having your traditional 1G LAN, you've got even faster hardline connectivity, and then also the latest generation Wi-Fi 6. And the really cool thing about Wi-Fi 6 is that the performance that you have with Wi-Fi 6 is going to be significantly faster than what you would have when you talk about, I'd say, you know, previous generation wireless experience. Well, in 811 AC, the AC experience was very, very, very fast. You know, Wi-Fi 6 has significantly improved the benchmark to where now really even the baseline is going to probably be, even in the real world, somewhere between about like 350 megabits to even over 750 megabits, and in some situations even almost near 1 gigabits of actual real world throughput. And so it's very high speed, very low latency, and we've got really cool software called GameFirst 6 that can work with both the wired and wireless connections to allow you to go ahead and have a more streamlined experience when it comes to your gaming, so that you can go ahead and prioritize, you know, your games, your downloads, your streams, whatever it is. You can just go ahead and go into the application and make those easy adjustments. And the cool thing is, for this generation, we have our AI networking. So GameFirst 6 now actually can do automatic detection where it connects into a cloud database. So the moment that it sees certain applications or it sees certain game services, it'll automatically prioritize those. So you don't even have to go in and make the adjustment. But it's ultimately always up to you. You can go in and pick between different types of presets, whether it's like live streaming or whether it's gaming, whether it's multimedia, or you can customize it all yourself. So pretty cool stuff in terms of that regard. So, you know, we've got a huge amount of boards. You know, we started a little bit late, so we can't go into some of the other detail that I had planned in terms of the motherboards. But like I said, you know, if you guys got more questions in terms of what you're wondering about when it comes to our Z490 series of boards, feel free and hit me up, you know, in the Discord or in the chat, and I'll do my best to go ahead and follow up to you. You know, we've got a lot of really cool stuff that I think that we've baked in. At the end of the day, the goal is we want to make sure to give you a stable and reliable experience when it comes to that. And you know, the other big thing about ASUS as well is that we're a huge company, and you know, we really focus on offering a lot of different options to gaming enthusiasts, not just, I think, for PC DIY enthusiasts, but also for enthusiasts that might be taking advantage of laptops. And so here I just want to give you one of kind of a preview of one of our coolest new options, which is going to be right here. And this is our SCAR 15, and we also have a 17-inch variant, but these are powered with the latest generation 10th gen series processors also. And so we'll take a little bit of a quick shot there on the other angle right there, but these guys, super nice series. You know, we've really focused on giving you outstanding thermal performance when it comes to the thermals, even on these higher end SKUs when you're talking about models that have a Core i7 or Core i9 that's in them. RTX series graphics cards in them. Very high refresh rate screens. This one is 300 hertz with 3 millisecond response time and still has 100% sRGB coverage. You know, thin bezels throughout. We have a new scissor arm based design right here, which has really a high level of reliability for the hinges. New for this generation, we've also gone ahead and incorporated liquid metal, which is the type of thermal compound that you use to make contact between the cooling solution and the CPU, which even gives us better thermal performance than in the previous generation. We've done some really cool stuff where we have this integrated light bar, essentially this lighting design that's all around the unit. So not only do you get your cool lighting, so if I go ahead and switch right here. I can show you guys. Not only do you, of course, have your RGB lighting on your keyboard, and we've done some cool stuff like making sure that you have spacing between all your function keys to make these easier to hit, dedicated actually quick access for fan controls, for full management, media keys, of course, these customized keys over here on the left-hand side. Really good travel, and we have overstroke technology, which is optimized to help to make sure that you have these actuations received a little bit more quickly when you're depressing this. It gives a little bit more of a desktop feel. Independent switches for your actual mouse. Well, excuse me, like on your mouse, so it feels much nicer than kind of tapping the keyboard. But got there the RGB on the eye as well. We also used a brand new soft finishing coating technology to help to kind of minimize fingerprints, but the light bar design goes all the way around right here. Really cool base design on these new generation units that we have. So you know, these are also, of course, we just finished launching these, and you can get them in multiple models in terms of the new ROG Strix 15. We also even have a bit more entry-level model that we call our new Electro Punk, which the cool thing about the Electro Punk line is that it's got a really cool kind of pick accent to it, where we've got peripherals and the laptop that kind of all matches into it. So those even are starting at around kind of the $1,000 price point, and then of course keep going up until you get into the kind of the Strix Scar series units, and then even our higher end kind of Zephyrus series units, where you can definitely get more expensive. But just like what we have in the motherboards, and we talked about form factors, you know, we've tried to give a lot of different choice to you to be able to kind of find the right features to the right function to the right specifications. So somebody's got a question about switches on I think our keyboard. So these are not mechanical. We optimize them for not only the reliability, so they're traditional scissor switch based design, but of course, you know, for our peripheral based products though, you know, we've got tons of our keyboards, you know, where we have, you know, of course, all your Cherry MX keys, where we just actually launched some new options right here in terms of TKL and non-TKL based models that are all different types of options when it comes to Cherry MX. And we also even do have optical mechanical switches under our Tough Gaming line. So if you haven't seen some of our peripheral lineup, you can definitely make sure to check that out too by, you know, just heading over to usa.asus.com. So thanks guys for checking out the stream. You know, appreciate it. If you guys have definitely any more questions, make sure to go ahead and hit me up. In terms of my handle, usually everything is going to be under ASUS Tech Marketing JJ. I'll make sure to go ahead and introduce myself in the actual Discord group. So if you guys want to follow up with any other questions, feel free and let me know. But very cool, and appreciate you guys tuning in and just giving me a little bit of time to be able to talk about some of the cool stuff that we've done on the motherboard side as well as on the laptop side. You know, all the way around, I think that we've got some pretty cool hardware, and I think for a lot of you guys, you're going to find pretty cool options, you know, regardless of whether you're looking for, you know, motherboards, peripherals, monitors, networking equipment, you know, coolers, power supplies. That's the thing now, I think, with the ASUS ROG family, as well as our new kind of Tough Gaming line of products. We've got a really extensive product portfolio that's really complementary, not only in terms of how it looks and feels, but the quality and reliability experience. And, you know, when it comes to Intel, our partnership with them is really outstanding, so that, you know, across the board, regardless of where your price point is or the experience that you're looking to define, you know, we got some really cool stuff. And I think even in one of the upcoming Nook sessions, you can even see how we've done further collaborations with stuff like our small form factor mini graphics cards, which, you know, just again to show you that regardless of whatever your type of your build or your experiences that you're looking for, we've probably got a product offering that help to complement that for you guys. So take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your days, and make sure everybody stay safe, stay healthy. It's been good being able to join you guys for the stream. So I'll make sure to go ahead and watch out there as well. Like I said, if there's any other questions that might be popping up in the Discord, I'll make sure to go ahead and check those up and try to, you know, follow up with you guys.